She's Katie Montgomery. He's Justin Joseph. These best friends are serving subpoenas to bad advice weekly with Wrong Way Forward. The advice column reboot you never knew you needed. Sparks fly. And so does the hilarity. Now, here's Katie and Justin.
Hi, my name is Katie Montgomery, and I'm here with my best friend, Justin Joseph, and welcome to episode 3 of Wrong Way Forward.
Hi, everybody. So good to see everybody out there. We're so excited to be on our third episode where we've really covered some interesting topics so far, don't you think?
I mean, definitely, I think we've covered fly balls, bad restaurant behavior.
Raw dogging, which you had no idea about.
I knew what raw dogging on a long flight.
Well, I feel like we need to address this first because after the last episode, you literally pulled me inside and were mortified that your mom's best friends are going to see this. And I think they'll be more embarrassed that you didn't know what raw dogging is. You're more freaked out that I explained what raw dogging was.
Well, that still holds, and that's the case, and you can't change anything. You mortified me and everyone I know in Mississippi, but otherwise, let's move on, Justin. And what's the topic for today?
So, today we're talking about one of America's chief advice givers, probably one of the most beloved figures there is. For me personally, she holds a very, very special place in my heart because, if you ever watch Devil Wears Prada, when Anne Hathaway comes running out of Meryl Streep's office and is like, how can I make this woman happy? And Nigel, who's played by Stanley Tucci, says, you don't want this job. And he's like, what you don't understand is that Runway is a beacon of light for gay little kids who are hiding in their bedspreads, reading a magazine. For me, that was Oprah. Every day I would come home to watch Oprah, and not just because I thought she was a beacon of light, but because she was a broadcaster, and I thought that's what I want to do.
So you let the cat out of the bag. It is Oprah. And just to let all of our listeners know, when I knew Justin, shortly after college, he did have a framed autographed photo of Oprah on full display. So she has really been, as you said, a beacon of light for you.
Yeah.
She's someone who probably doesn't curry as much favor as she did.
You've never been a huge Oprah fan. Why is that? I think you thought, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I remember from when I used to talk about it, you were like, not impressed.
No, that's actually not correct. That's factually incorrect. I've always been impressed by Oprah. How can you not be impressed by
I feel like we need a button where we can just hit it and you can be like, that's factually incorrect with me, because I feel like that's a theme.
Well, it is, because we know that you like to exaggerate the truth quite a bit. But and I actually do have a crazy kind of story connection to Oprah. Oprah is from my home state of Mississippi, and I attended kind of what we lovingly call the nerd school, Mississippi School for Math and Science. And actually, I was in the 3rd graduating class, and we did write Oprah a letter asking if she would return to her home state and be our featured speaker. She passed on that, and in fact, I don't know if she ever formally did. But she is someone who is very well regarded. And I think today we're going to kind of step out on a limb and do something that some people might say is sacrilegious and say the advice that we're going to cover that she gave was the wrong way forward.
Okay. And I agree. We'll get there. I would only say, like, you and I were lucky enough to have and we'll get beyond my obvious fascination with Oprah.
Yes.
We were lucky enough to have a friend who was wonderful producers. And so after we graduated, and I still adored her, and I got into broadcasting and adored her more, we were able to contact our friend, and I was like, can you get me to the show? And those tickets were impossible to have. And so she greenlighted me to the show several times. And I'll remember the 2 episodes. I remember specifically one where I sat because I knew where she came out, and she walked right out and walked right past me. I was on the aisle. And I remember being devastated in my heart, like, that's it. And then she literally turned around, looked at me literally turned around and said, you have a really cute shirt on, and kept going. So I'll never forget that moment.
Well, of course.
And the second episode, I had lied at work because I was at the prosecutor's office. And they're like, I don't know if I had any vacation time, but I think Molly, our producer friend, gave us one day, you can come on this date. And I was like, oh, I will be there.
Yes.
And so I was there, and I remember at the beginning they said the only way not to get on camera is if you chew gum or read her teleprompter.
Yes.
So I read the entire teleprompter. I chewed gum because I did not want anyone back in Denver to be like, why is Justin there when he called in sick to work?
There you go.
So
And it's going to be interesting to see what happens when we process whether or not her advice was the wrong way forward, where you're going to land.
yeah, 100%. So we're going to listen to this advice. This is from 2008. It was her Stanford commencement address. Again, not surprising. I think we feel a little bit differently about the advice, but let's listen to her advice and we'll take it up on the other side.
What I know now is that feelings are really your GPS system for life. When you're supposed to do something or not supposed to do something, your emotional guidance system lets you know. The trick is to learn to check your ego at the door and start checking your gut instead. Every right decision I've ever made has come from my gut. And every wrong decision I've ever made was a result of me not listening to the greater voice of myself. If it doesn't feel right, don't do it. That's the lesson. And that lesson alone will save you, my friends, a lot of grief.
So we'll stop there. I mean, I think on its face, it sounds like good advice, but you think it's the wrong way forward.
Well, I coach a lot of executives, and there is this concept kind of called the rider and the elephant. The idea is, imagine, the average person, let's say that they're, approximately 150 pounds. Imagine an elephant, that's 6 tons. So the rider is your logical brain. That is the one that is processing the evidence, the data, it's doing something that's logical. Your emotional brain is that elephant. It's 6 tons. It takes over. And 150 person cannot steer a 6-ton elephant. And what I find is that when we have our emotional brain take over, our emotional brain is brilliant. It can tell us crazy stories. It can argue us out of something. It can give us all of these motivations that everyone around us that we think they have, when actually we don't know that as a fact.
So let me dumb that down. So you're saying your emotional brain can tell you look good in an outfit when you don't, because you're like excited that you just bought it.
Or I think the better example is, would be is that you say, I can't speak up in this meeting because your emotional brain is saying, I'm going to say something stupid. I'm not as educated as everyone in the room. I don't have a senior position. I'm not someone who normally, speaks as an expert in this space. So therefore I'm not going to speak. Yes.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Just telling yourself stories, and the emotional brain does that. It's not logical.
For me, that shows up in my age. I walk into a place and I think I'm too old. Like, I had a job last year where I had to wear a suit, and I just don't think I've ever felt older than when I put a suit on. I just do not think it's attractive. But you're saying that's all emotional brain.
That's emotional brain. And I think what Oprah is saying is like, and if we listen to a further clip, which I think is really important, is she said, your emotion should be your GPS system. It should be what guides you. And I'm not saying take emotions or gut out of the system, but you have to not forget about logic. You can't forget about the data and the pieces that you're taking in. And if we allow ourselves to only move on emotion, we might be steering down the wrong path. And I think it's very easy for Oprah to say that when she's at Stanford, a very, prestigious university, giving a graduation speech, when she's been on the Forbes, 50, when she's considered the #1 queen of all talk media. It's very easy 2020 vision to say, follow your gut.
And she's Oprah also, right? To your point.
Yes.
She's Oprah. When you're Oprah, you can say anything.
Correct.
Okay. So let's listen. You said there's a couple of things we wanted to highlight. Let's listen to Oprah's continued speech, and we'll catch it on the other end.
And start checking your gut instead. Every right news. So what I know now is that feelings are really your GPS system for life. When you're supposed to do something or not supposed to do something, your emotional guidance system lets you know. The trick is to learn to check your ego at the door and start checking your gut instead.
You say what to that?
I say that your emotional GPS is really, could take you down the wrong path. Emotions can take us into a path of, we can go back and visit periods of trauma. We can be nervous. We can be anxious. And that can take over that logical brain that is able to take in the real data, the real story as it's evolving rather than the story we tell ourselves.
Love that. And so I think there's some real takeaways, whether you're a student, whether you're a high level or a C-level manager, a high level executive. I think there's some real takeaways. We're going to talk about those on the other side of the break. Plus, we're going to talk about some viewer emails from our episode last week.
Yes.
And we'll evaluate all that and take another look when we get back right after this.
You've been listening to Wrong Way Forward, where bad advice goes to die and then gets resurrected just so we can roast it again.
That's right, Katie. Nobody's off limits, not the gurus, not the influencers, and definitely not Oprah.
Sorry, Oprah.
If you're enjoying the chaos, hit like and subscribe and come back every Thursday for new episodes.
Have a new topic or some disastrously bad advice you want to dissect? Email wrongwayforwardpodcast@gmail.com. Include your contact info.
Now back to Wrong Way Forward.
Roasting the worst advice ever. Welcome back to the Katy and Justin podcast.
So welcome back to Wrong Way Forward. This week we're talking about one of America's most beloved advice givers, Oprah Winfrey. And we took on her 2008 commencement speech where she talks about following your gut and how that can be your greatest guide moving forward. You say that's not the right advice, it's the wrong advice. You say that because why?
Well, it's the wrong way forward. And I think if you think about what she actually said is that your emotion should be your GPS. So imagine that you're a driver in a car using a GPS system and you're blindly following what the GPS is saying. You've also got to take in the data. Has there been a car accident? Is there a, crazy driver, and you need to kind of focus defensive driving,
We just kind of,
or is there a horrible driver and you need to kind of respond to that? Is there construction in the road that maybe that GPS hasn't taken care of? Emotions are important, gut is important, but people need to be very aware when making decisions is to not let that cloud and totally be blind to what are the facts and the data that they're taking in.
and I love this because, Katie and I were talking while we were off air in the break, and she said, is this exciting enough of an episode? But the truth is not all life is fun and, laugh out loud. Sometimes there are real takeaways. And that's one of the things we want to pass across in our broadcast is sometimes there's some real takeaways from our advice.
And I don't think we even realize on a day-to-day basis how much we are already influenced by our emotions. The way you see something, the way you interpret something, your gut reaction to something, that's been influenced by a former negative reaction that might not be fair in the current, kind of climate. And so that's why you can't be, as Oprah said, totally focused on the emotion. There has to be the logical piece.
And you see this showing up again and again in coaching sessions?
Yes, millions of times. And, the examples are plentiful where people tell themselves stories and it's based on the emotion.
Yeah.
They might be feeling the emotion of anxiety or inferiority or nervousness. And that translates to, I'm not smart enough to speak up. I'm not senior enough to speak up.
I'm too old in my case.
I'm too old. Yes. Where again, the logical piece should be, I've done the homework, or I've been assigned this project, or I have something valid to say. And so we need to be careful to not 100% sit in that emotional space.
I love that. I think that's great advice. I think it's, and it's hard to take on a thought leader like Oprah, but sometimes not everybody's right.
Well, and sometimes even the most famous of advice givers can go the wrong way forward.
And get it wrong. Exactly. All right. So now it's time to revisit our last week's episode and talk about some of our viewer emails on why either you were right or maybe they thought I was right.
Right.
Let's start with our most popular topic last week from looking at our data was the discussion over the woman who came in to take the child's. So there was a home run ball. A father caught it for his son, and you see this woman run in with bad jeans, and you couldn't see what she was saying to that because her back was to the camera, but he ends up giving her the ball. I thought that was the wrong way. He thought it was the right way.
Correct.
And I think some of our viewers agreed with me more than they agreed with you. And so let's talk about some of our viewer emails that came through. Let's talk about some of our viewer emails that came through. Hi, team. I just listened to Katie. I love you, but your logic this week had more holes than my kid's soccer net. Justin, keep the smug tone. You earned it. I'm not sure I love that, but it's an email that thought I was on the right side. You?
Well, I think what's really interesting is I heard it said, Is Justin's commitment to standing on his principles unwavering, or does it only apply when to fights he knows he could win, like against a restaurant's wine list or a woman with bad genes?
Oh, someone actually wrote about bad genes. I mean, I know I should. That was a little bit ad hominem, but she really did have bad genes on. What else do we have? Katie, denial isn't a valid debate strategy. Justin was right. The people have spoken. Take the L with grace and a bottle of cheap wine. Ouch. That's like cutting hope.
Well, I mean, I'm really hesitant to read the next one because I think it's just pure nasty, but because you're throwing, some curveballs. Justin, since you think that the dad should have stood his ground against the Phillies Karen and punched her in the face, would you have done the same? If the woman who called you, oh, sorry, I can't read it anymore. Oh, excuse me. And I don't really want to say this one, but since you are throwing a lot of curveballs and hitting a little bit below the belt, Justin, since you think the dad should have stood his ground against the Phillies Karen and punched her in the face, would you have done the same if the woman who called you right had demanded your framed quote back? Do you remember you said that you would have a framed quote up in your...
So now we're going to turn to the segment where we take on last week's spirit emails from our discussion last week. And one of the hottest topics in looking at our data from last week where people had really strong positions on the woman who ran over when the father caught the foul ball at the baseball game and gave it to his child. The woman ran over and let him have it, and he gave her the ball. And I thought that was totally unacceptable. You had a different take.
I did. I mean, I thought that, for the sake of, keeping the peace and, and giving a teaching moment to the son. And, and it's really interesting because, I've also heard from people and, and it's really interesting. And it said, given Justin's principal stance on cheap wine and fighting for a baseball, why isn't he taking on big beer or big soda for the sake of his relationships?
Okay. That doesn't make any sense. I have a few that supported my position. Katie, you seriously let someone snatch an adult t-shirt from your niece and you shrug it? Ooh, interesting. She's coming for you. Justin's right. Your kids need to learn that boys don't get trophies for being loud.
Yes, but we also need to learn in this day and age where people are incredibly volatile and people have crazy reactions that you don't match crazy with crazy. You diffuse a situation and you move on. Oh, it's a ball.
This is my favorite. Justin, I nearly spit out my drink when you roasted her jeans, but seriously, you're right. Parenting is about teaching courage, not crowd pleasing. Katie, Grace is great at church potlucks, not when Karen and Mom just bully a kid out of his mouth. Thank you, Shannon from Chicago. That is literally that summarizes my entire point.
Well, I mean, I'm just going to go below the belt here, and it's not a very kind thing, but John from Seattle says, Justin, since you believe it's important to stand your ground and fight for what's yours, have you confronted the person who gave you the haircut you're still rocking?
Okay, so that is a what do you call it?
A diss?
That's a diss, but it's like it's an equal for me commenting on her jeans. It's an ad hominem. It's a
yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Meet like and like. And is that what we want in this country? Is just nastiness begetting nastiness.
So in our next segment, we're going to come back and have we talked about this? We're going to talk about Find Your Friends. For those of you who know what it is, it's literally an app where you can get it and you can track your best friends or your spouse. Katie thinks it's the worst invasion of privacy this year, and I think it's a fun friend tool and way to make sure your spouse isn't cheating.
Okay, well, we'll come back and we'll cover it then.
Thanks for streaming Wrong Way Forward, the weekly reminder that advice is usually free for a reason. We call out bad advice wherever it hides: boardrooms, break rooms, and even book clubs.
Enjoying this dumpster fire? Like, subscribe, and check back every Thursday for new episodes. Want us to roast your favorite piece of nonsense? Email us at wrongwayforwardpodcast@gmail.com. Be sure to include your contact info. We're not psychic, just judgmental. And now, back to Wrong Way Forward.
Roasting the worst advice ever. Welcome back to the Katy and Justin podcast.
And we're back. Thank you so much for listeners for staying with us. And we are going to talk about following your friends, meaning the app on Apple, which is Find Your Friends, or some people have something called Life 360. And I want to state for the record, I think it is completely fine from a safety and parental concern to follow your children in order to kind of keep tabs on them. The question here that we're talking about is, should you be following the moves and the steps and the locations of your friends?
Yeah, I mean, so this is our favorite segment because it's like, can we talk about this? It's something that has really nothing to do with good advice or bad advice. It's just something that can be divisive. And apparently this is. You really had strong feelings about it.
I did. When you told me that you had a handful of friends that you followed, I thought, first of all, this is a lack of boundaries. This has issues of privacy. I think that it leads to social drama and manipulation. I think that there can be a lot of assumptions made just about where someone is and when they're there.
Well, of course, that's the fun. That's the fun of it. Whatever happened to having fun with these kinds of things?
Because I think that fun can delve into not fun. And I think it is odd. I think it's very strange for people at 40 plus to be following each other.
Okay. So let me first give some background here. Like, you're right. I have a number of friends that we follow. Some that I haven't, that I wouldn't even call close friends, but they just have been, for one reason or the other, somebody that we follow, maybe because we had an event together or had a weekend together. And it's like, here's where I am. And we never got off of that. But some of my friends, because they're super close and it's fun to know what they're doing and where they are, and they know what I'm doing and where I am.
But I've been here and you've made some assumptions when you've looked at that kind of location information. And you start to kind of question and you start to create kind of ulterior motives. I don't think that's very healthy.
Okay, so I mean, to be non-specific, yes. I mean, you have been privy to when we saw someone that was somewhere and we didn't know what that person was doing in that area. And yeah, but again, that's what friends do.
But I want to go back to kind of the example you gave, is that you were following some people that weren't your closest, tightest friends. And then you said it just happened that we didn't stop following each other. Wouldn't it make sense? Wouldn't the right way rather than the wrong way forward be to, like, let's revisit this? And then I think if we are following each other for a specific purpose, we're in Spain, we're camping, we're taking a weekend vacation. Wouldn't it be smart as adults to reevaluate? Thank you. We had it for a purpose. Our contract among us was for this particular event or vacation. Now we're going to cease following each other.
Well, what I don't do often, but I will do here, is I will prove your point for you. There was a time many, many years ago where I was following a friend and it became unhealthy because I didn't feel like that friend had was treated me the way I should be treated. And my following that person became more of why was I not invited to this particular thing or something? So it was unhealthy.
Yes. And I think there could be a fine line between following and checking in and stalking.
Okay, stalking is a big word for any friend group. It was not anything that had to do with that. And the nice thing about these apps is you always have the option of saying you don't get to follow me anymore, or I don't want you to follow me anymore.
Yeah, but you could have a friend like me who's a technological idiot and doesn't even realize it's happening, or has gone for a fun weekend. The objective was having a good time. I'm stepping away from the weekend and going right into my work week. I forget that it was even on.
And for me and you, who are very close, what would be the harm in that if you forgot it was on and I knew you were at place X or place Y or place Z? Why would that threaten me?
I don't think the right word is threaten. I think my first question would be, why do you care? Get a life. And then I think the second piece would be, this is an inappropriate relationship. This is not what we're here to do. This is not friendship, to follow someone, particularly when you live in Denver and I live in DC. If there were to be an issue, the SOS process would not be very quick and speedy.
Okay, so here's the prosecutor me. So I'm going to do specific generalization specific. So you don't have a problem with me following my spouse? Yes or no?
If you and your spouse agreed to that, I would have a problem.
Well, all of my friends have agreed to this. I'm not following anybody without their knowledge. So that argument fails. Do you have a problem with me following my spouse? Yes or no?
Not if there has been an agreement, but I think that you indicated earlier that you have followed people in the past and that it was for a specific purpose and that it just never stays.
But they always have to agree it. They have to share the location. So it's always an agreement. I can't just randomly follow someone because I know where their iPhone photo.
I think it's strange.
Okay, but just answer my question. Do you think it's a problem for a spouse to follow a spouse?
No, if there's an agreement.
Tell me why that's okay.
because I think generally spouses have a contract between the two of them to keep people abreast of where they are and what they're doing, and for safety concerns.
But it has to do with how close the relationship.
I mean, I would agree so. I mean,
So if you agree to that, then would it be okay for a brother to follow a sister or a sister to follow a brother?
I think there are some families that do that. I think we're talking about friends.
So I know, but now we're talking about degrees of relationship, because it's
Right.
spouses can follow spouses, and if that's okay, then maybe siblings can follow siblings. Less of a relationship is still important. The next step down is best friends. What's the difference?
I think generally here's the issue: if two consenting adults agree, I don't have a problem with it.
But that's the
But
key.
I have the problem is what are grown adults doing following each other? And I have to tell you, my experience, and I was shocked that this behavior existed, it was not for safety or concern. It was literally for drama and discussion, and to be able to shoot the breeze.
I think that is an incorrect assumption.
That's not an assumption. It's based on what I observed.
Well, it's one situation, but I think we still have to go back to the fact that you're okay with spouses following spouses. You may be okay with siblings following siblings. The next step down is you should be okay with best friends following best friends. There's nothing.
Again, I don't have a problem if it's consensual. I just think it's strange. I think it's very strange. And I think generally, that we have gotten to a point in the world where people don't have kind of an independence. There's a constant kind of overwatch. And I think we do need to be careful about privacy, because once it starts to erode, and people, it's very interesting. I mean, this is the lawyer in me speaking, but people are always like, oh, I don't care if somebody watches that or observes me or does that, because they're like, I'm not doing anything wrong. But then if the line moves as to what is wrong and what is not is right, and I just find this to be a general kind of awkward and odd kind of intention of doing this, particularly at this age.
And I think your logic fails because you are okay with spouses doing it and maybe siblings. Then all of that logic has to apply.
Well, I would never follow my spouse, and I would hope my spouse wouldn't follow me, but I'm okay with anyone who are two consenting adults decide to do it.
Always been consenting. I'm not, we do this, that.
But I'm saying it's just weird and strange. And also, I think what particularly, with spouses, it's like, what's the trust and what is this? I think there's a bigger issue at play if you're constantly following your spouse.
Okay, well, we want to hear what you think. I mean, obviously, this is another example of something Katy and I are not going to agree upon, but we want to hear what you think. So email us at wrongwayforwardpodcast@gmail.com. Next week, we're tackling more of this week's best and worst advice. We're going to tell you more about why we think some of your favorite thought thinkers have it wrong. And we'll see you next week on Wrong Way Forward.
It's great. See you then.
All right, that's a wrap on this week's episode of Wrong Way Forward. Remember, the only thing worse than taking bad advice is giving it.
If you've liked what you've heard, like, subscribe, or follow us wherever you stream podcasts. And if you've got a topic or need some advice we'll probably regret giving, email us at wrongwayforwardpodcast@gmail.com.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Wrong Way Forward.